Hello and welcome to Tremaine Sci-Fi Hour. Today we have Marie Sykes on, author of the Adventures of Gwyneth Eldron?
Zane.
Elzane. Sorry. Very professional. Marie, give us an idea of who you are, what you write, and some general stuff like that.
Well, as we were saying earlier, I'm an astrophysics and English double major. I'm a university student. But outside of all of that, I'm a writer. I love to draw. I'm an artist. I grew up all over the world. I lived around in the US and Canada and the Middle East, and also love video games
And
and to bake.
so tell us a little bit more about this book because from our brief conversation, it's essentially a mixture. There's an element of a mixture between sci-fi and fantasy. So give us an idea about what the premise, or if you can give the synopsis of what the book would essentially entail.
Yeah. Okay, so The Adventures of Gwyneth All Zane. Uh, It's originally started off as a Twitter novel, actually. I
Mm.
was starting at the whole idea was that this fantasy DNS character got her hands on a phone, on an iPhone, and she started tweeting her adventures. And that spiraled into a whole series of books that I'm in the beginning stages of curating right now. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, I'm a bit further into that process. But basically, so Gwyneth, there was there was this evil sorceress named Influence from the planet of France, and she came over to this land, and she was terrorizing it. And but Gwyneth Olzane, she was a knight of the kingdom. She's the first female knight of the kingdom, trying to make some progress on that area, prove that women can be knights just like all the men could. And she defeated her and got her hands on this phone in the whole process. And so the whole series is based off of the premise that she's a knight and she's adventuring and she's critiquing some political climate of the area, but also getting into horribly comedic adventures like having to fight the squirrel mafia all at the same time. That's my favorite part. It's in the beginning chapters, so it's not.
Well, if there's
It's
one
very.
thing we know about squirrels, it's they make terrific mafiosos. So
They
tell
do.
So tell me. Well, actually, yeah. Let's go with the Squirrel Mafia. I think that's probably a good place to start. So are they sort of? So obviously, magic is
Yeah.
in the realm because
Oh yeah.
I don't know if the audience knows this, but squirrels don't generally have a mafia. Um,
Do they not know that? Oops.
so, if you may, if you will, what is the magic system in place? So, what is the how are the squirrels able to form a mafia? Is what I'm asking.
Well, these are talking squirrels. Um, just to clarify that. Um, they're it's not a soft magic system. It's not like a super hard magic system because the user and Gwyneth are part of it is also that she has two siblings and both of them got the family magic, but she didn't get any magic. And that's not something she like generally like cares too much about, but she's surrounded by magic all of her life. And so we see it come in a lot through those perspectives. And no, the sorceress in quotation marks influencer that brought the phone in, she didn't really have magic, but it's kind of seen as like this other. It's seen technology and that kind of thing is also kind of seen as this other in the novel. um but you see magic come in, you see it through the animals, you see it through magical creatures in the forest. There's nymphs and dragons, and it's all a natural part of the universe. This is what she's always known.
Right.
And
So
she has a talking magic sword as well. Can't forget
a
that.
lot of talking stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah, a lot of dialogue.
yeah, well, that's where the best stuff is. Otherwise, it's just blocks and
Yeah.
blocks of. Like I have a book by a very famous author called Asimov,
Oh
right
yeah.
here, and yeah, it's blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of just information, and sometimes if you're not into that, it can get quite tedious. But for a more
Yeah.
general audience, it's better to have dialogue. So just so people know. What? So tell me a little bit about this idea of. So obviously, it's a strange concept of having a knight suddenly have a phone. Now, she goes on to, did you say Twitter?
Twitter, yeah.
Yeah. So,
She goes onto Twitter, and
yeah.
I made a whole different like Twitter account for it. It's privated now because I'm in the process of publishing. But she was just it didn't it was wasn't originally a novel when it first started out. It was like it was an experiment,
Right.
and I was trying to see where this would go. And so
And so
the
it's
first
ended up as a.
yeah, the first book and
Sorry, no, go ahead.
oh no, the first book of that and a half, it was all written originally on Twitter.
Oh,
And then I was gonna finish. I wrote it in like I break them up to different like parks or like arcs, as I was saying. I mean, as I called them. But like towards the end of the second arc in the second book, I got COVID, and so that's when I broke. I just was like, okay, it's time just to write off because I couldn't keep up with my schedule anymore.
right. And so, COVID, Jesus, that was
Yeah,
that was a thing, wasn't it?
it was. I mean, you guys have
So,
had, yeah. I just got it in May during finals week.
perfect, perfect timing. Perfect.
Yeah.
So I suppose, well, yeah, I suppose for some people, COVID has been a time for discovering new things about themselves and discovering how well they can stay in their house for, how long they can stay in their house for. Um,
Yeah.
it certainly was a test of governments. A lot, some passed, some didn't, and don't get too much into
Agree there.
that. I think New Zealand did quite well, but
You guys did much better than we did.
well, we're not here to gloat yet. Um,
Oh,
well, yeah. So, during COVID, did you find more time to write? Did you find more time? Because we obviously had this moment where we didn't need to go anywhere, and I'm assuming. Well, actually, I shouldn't assume that, but most authors and most writers are a bit. What's the word?
introverted.
Introverted. Introverted,
Yeah.
yeah. And a bit weird. So, so what, what, what did you find? Did you find that as you were writing the stuff, you were like, damn, I know what I'm doing? Or what was your sort of process there?
Well, March 2020, when everything shut down, I should clarify, I'm in America. And so during that whole time, I was about 2 months away from graduating high school, actually. And so it was like, oh, well, I have all this free time. My goal for that year, I wanted to write a novel because I hadn't, when high school was really hard to keep writing, just everything going on, schoolwork and all that stuff. And I was like, well, I guess if I'm off school for like 2 weeks, then I can find some time to write. And just, we never went back to school. So I kept writing. I wrote a novel during then. Um, and that I'm still, it's in the back burner. But then the next year I went into university and I had online classes and I was finding some time to write, but it also was just entirely different environment than being at home all day. Because from the you're living by yourself for your first time, and there's a lot more stress going on. Just with all the stressors that come with going to university and living in a COVID environment. So one weekend, like my dorm got put on lockdown because there was a party down the hall and a bunch of people got COVID from that. I was nowhere close to that party except for my unfortunate proximity to living 2 doors down the hall from it. But it's that kind of thing that goes on. So I found last summer that I wanted to write some more, and I
Right.
was like, I'm gonna find a way to write, and I wanted to try something new, something I hadn't really tried before, and so Gwyneth was made.
Gwyneth was born. And so, just quickly, I know that
Mhm.
during the COVID pandemic, because we obviously locked down very quickly,
Oh yeah.
we were like,
Hmm.
we had like someone
When
had
did you
this.
lock down?
We locked down in I think March, and it got to our
Yeah.
country in March. So, so we were very quick to just
Yeah.
go. That's it. No one in, no one out.
Uh-huh.
Everyone in their house. And
Yeah.
so during that time, I remember there was a news article about people, and it was a warning from the government saying stop using Tinder. It was just like it's like that with the party, right? It's like who, what, who's doing that? Who's going out? Who's going out and having a party while there's a global pandemic? And then you forget, oh yeah, I'm an introvert. I can spend time by myself. These people slowly going insane.
Yeah.
So, so what was the what was so you said you finished high school the year of the pandemic. So, or
Yeah.
the year of the
Right there.
Western pandemic, I suppose, because it was going on
Yeah.
in 2019. But
Yeah.
what?
Before we really knew about it.
Yeah, well, I, I actually have a story about it. There's
Oh.
so me and the co-host that's usually here,
Hmm.
Jag, but he's got his dad over for the week, and
Hmm.
yeah, they'll be having a few. Um, so during that time, Jag was telling me there's this virus in China, and it's getting out of control in China. I'm like, oh, really? And we were doing research in late 2019, and we are like, oh, I hope this thing doesn't go airborne. And then of course it was airborne. The droplets were in, and it's like, oh.
Oh.
Anyway, long story short, I have a bit of a tendency towards delusional. I'm mentally ill, and
Hmm.
I have a delusion. I sometimes get a bit delusional, and so I went to the store in January. So this is a few months before the pandemic, and got all this these gloves, the masks, the cleaning equipment, all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff for colds and stuff. Anyway, long story short, they put me in the hospital for because they said the COVID pandemic's not coming here, which I remind my psychologist of frequently. And so they they put me in the hospital, and then as the pandemic came, they were like, "Should we let him? Do we let him?" And so, because yeah, it turns out I was a little ahead of my time, acted a little crazy. Some would say,
Hmm.
the doctors would say, and they're the ones with all the power. So yeah, we I
Yeah.
think we all have our COVID stories, but mine got a little weird. So tell me a bit
Yeah. Mhm.
about what Gwyneth, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
I keep Gwendolyn for some reason keeps going in my head. Um, tell me tell me tell me a little bit about what her reactions have been to some rather should we put interesting political developments in the world.
Ooh. That was the thing. Uh, to be quite honest, I focus more on the politics within her world. I don't.
Oh,
She
okay,
goes on
cool.
the internet some, but she does. I sometimes because also I would write like in the beginning of the week, and then as it goes on, it just I want to break up that her world with that with like, oh wait, what's even been happening in this past year? There's so much that it all blends together. One thing I did have her comment on though is when Taylor Swift's Red album came out. I had her listen to that.
Yeah, that's
Stop it.
well, that is a major political event.
It
No,
was.
it was a good album
She
too.
listened to All Too Well. It was. I mean, it is. I still listen to it all the time.
Me too, actually. I think so. What are so the politics of her world must be so actually yeah that's a good question I should have asked at the beginning. When is this? So if it was humanity, when is it generally set? Where is it set? You know, is it Arabic medieval? Is it uh, Asiatic medieval? Is it medieval at all? Someone we interviewed called Mitchell
Mhm.
Mountain. That interview will come out soon. That he he actually did it during the Industrial Revolution. So when did you yeah, I know it was a really weird idea.
Mhm.
So where have you sort of implanted yourself?
I mean, it's fairly medieval. It's not the technology in that world's not strictly held to like the same progression, like how humans progressed over here.
Right.
It's kind of just set like generally. I think I decided it was an alternate dimension, not like alternate to Earth, but like just like another dimension entirely. Um, and so I was thinking, I was plotting out, trying to decide like where are the limits of technology, where are the limits of magic, because magic would have having magic available in that world would have definitely affected the whole progression of technology because it's like what needs to be invented if if you can heal a lot of people with magic, then medicine progresses in a totally different way. Or
Right.
like if all of a sudden there's a lack of healers in your society, your and your the magic goes down, then medicine has to progress. And so it's balancing that kind of thing. I generally it's roughly like maybe late medieval, early Renaissance,
Oh
roughly
yeah.
then. It's a bit of Europe, but there's a neighboring country that's more Arabic,
Ah
like
yes.
inspired.
Yeah.
But I try to draw more from oh, it's like half and half. Half drawn from the world and half drawn from just kind of the direction that I want to go in.
Dark thoughts are coming to your head. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Do you know what's
she's
funny?
got to survive 5 books.
Do you know what's going to be funny is when because
Yeah.
there's no video on this, so you cut out when you laugh, so it's going to look like
Oh,
I've just insulted you, and then you've gone quiet. This is going to be so funny. Oh, I'm going to cut this part out too.
horrible.
I'm going to cut this part out too and make it look bad. No,
Man, no, you should clarify. I am laughing.
yeah,
Very generally, I laugh along with you.
yeah. So that's going to
I'm
be a
just
thing.
happy to be here. This is fun.
So
Uh,
I just clarified that so people don't think I'm just sitting here going like just throwing
oh
things
yeah,
at you. That
I
would have
had
been
no idea I was cutting out. Man,
so so
I've been laughing a lot.
so yeah so tell me a bit about these so mystical creatures because there's obviously the classics dragons,
Mhm.
unicorns, orcs, whatever Jar Jar Binks was. You know,
Mm.
just so you know,
I
classical
think that
creatures.
one's new.
No.
He's not classic. He's in his own class.
He's a classic to me, yeah.
Okay.
So no, obviously these creatures. I mean, everyone says you know it has to be Tolkien inspired. It has to have. You have to have elves. You have to have orcs. You have to have this. What mystical creatures did you bring to the world besides talking squirrels?
Besides talking squirrels, there's some nymphs. There are pretty early on also. There's a golden dragon who takes over a town. I think my favorite one that I made up that's in book one is that there's something I call the cyclair. And it's just like it's like an icicle kind of like formed hair, like a rabbit. And it's just it's like coated with icicles, if that would make sense, like white fur.
Oh yes, like a yeah.
And I'm sure I've seen a picture of something similar online that but
Hey, look, if Jag was here, he would be telling you
that's where we're
exactly where it's from. That's his talent. I come up with
yeah.
these ideas that I think are original, and he goes, "Oh, you mean like Blade Runner?" I'm like, "Get out of my life!" No, it's
Yeah.
he's very much Jag's talented in that way of being able to find out
Mhm.
where exactly your ideas came from. Even if you've never
Yeah.
read, heard of it, or seen anything to do with it, somehow there's something in the human psyche that limits us to these sort of
Yeah.
stories. And what's your experience with that? Because obviously there's a point in every writer's life where they have to come to terms with the fact they'll never be not wholly original, but you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
completely groundbreaking. This is the first thing of its kind.
Yeah. 'Cause I mean, everything's had before, come before. Just saw this. I saw this funny post today, and it was all about like, oh, what you can't write a wizarding school because of Harry Potter, but like there was a million wizarding schools before Harry Potter, and someone was like, if you really want to piss them off, you can say X-Men, like a little magical school, and I was like, man, I love that. But with just everything that's been done before, everything that's been said before, um, I think the way you tell it and how you voice it.
Yeah.
I mean that you also still mimicking pull from different people, but I think that's what adds the most unique spin on that because you're combining your voice that you formed from like various different places that you've listened to, you've read, or you've seen, and then you're taking your ideas that you're also pulling from different places,
Well, because there's
and
also the element.
hopefully you don't sound too much like someone else.
But obviously, there's things that people bring to different parts of the table, right? Because
Mhm.
if you're right, so say, because my inspiration would be Star Wars, but George Lucas grew up in a small town in California
Yeah.
during like the '60s. I didn't do any of those things, so obviously I'm going to have a different voice than he has. And so I imagine
Mhm.
your inspirations would be like who's an inspiration for you, for example?
Ooh. And I think a lot of what I'm inspired by is whatever I'm seeing around me lately, whatever I'm reading.
Right.
I try not to. I try to distance myself from that when I'm writing because I'm active. I don't want to copy anyone. I'm like very like conscious of that because you're like, oh, I can't just write like there's a million and one books like this like right now. I can't just write that. Um, that's also what you're seeing all the time. I think a big inspiration for me is I grew up. I read a lot of Narnia books when I was a
Oh
kid.
yes, the
We
Chronicles
read
of
that. I
Narnia.
loved C.S. Lewis growing up. I'm looking at my bookshelves right behind my computer.
Mine's hidden behind that
I,
whiteboard. So
I'm just there. What was it?
Harry
Douglas
Potter.
Adams. He no, that's a. I read. I loved those as a kid. I read them over and over again in middle school. Oh,
Yeah, we won't talk about the
that's
author,
not.
but
That's not. An author's book. What?
so do you know what's interesting about that?
Oh,
So
what?
we were talking about something that's very important. It's called Death of the Author, and it sounds horrible, but
Oh
what it
yeah,
is, do you know? It's that whole thing
I've
where,
heard of it. Yeah.
yeah, where you say, okay, the author's actually not important to the story. If they
Mhm.
intended the curtains to be blue and they haven't made them blue, then that's their fault, and you just go with what your interpretation
Mhm.
is. But then there's also the aspect of, so for example, Wagner, the conductor
Mhm.
Wagner who wrote Flight of the Valkyries, he was
Mhm.
a eugenics. He believed in eugenics. He was essentially a Nazi before Nazis, but you can still listen to his music without being a Nazi.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying about Harry Potter. Is like we need to. I think there's an importance of obviously saying J.K. Rowling, get your shit together, but
Yeah.
stop talking about. Just leave politics to the politicians, whatever. Anyway, well, maybe not,
Mhm.
but so there's an important thing because I feel like as a Harry, because I was a
Mhm.
Harry Potter fan, and people sort
Yeah.
of bring that sort of shame with like you can't read Harry Potter, like why not?
Mhm.
She's not saying it in the book. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but Harry Potter, I think it was great for its time, and it certainly was a
Mhm.
inspiration for a lot of because I think we're around about the same age.
Yeah.
So it would have been a mess. It was the big event of the time.
Oh yeah.
Like,
And
yeah.
even still now, it's massive influence. I remember when The Cursed Child came out, which I forgot existed until about a week ago when I saw something about it. Even when that came out, it's just like everyone was like, "Oh, look, it's the next Harry Potter." I'm like, "Ah, look at this." But I
uh,
forgot so much of what happened in that book. I blocked it out of my memory.
you saw J.K. Rowling type something on Twitter and thought, you know what?
Oh
Never again. But yeah.
no.
So what so C.S. Lewis, obviously being a very old writer, he was an
Yeah.
old white guy from
Yeah.
England, heavily
Yeah, lots
Christian.
of different ideas.
He
Hmm.
had, so he was a wildly different person to you. You
Oh
grew up
yeah.
in a variety of countries. You didn't serve in the First World War, I'm assuming. Uh,
No. Oh,
no.
you caught me.
Draft dodger, yeah. So, so you didn't grow up in England, and you weren't. So there's things that you will say that he wouldn't have said, right? Like
Oh
you're
yeah.
also, if you didn't know this, because it may be hard to tell, she's a woman. So
Yeah.
there's an element of, well, you're not gonna write exactly like C.S. Even if you wanted to copy the Chronicles of Narnia, no matter what you do, you're gonna end up putting your voice into it, right?
Yeah. Um, like discussing all the things. Like I love like exploring religion in fantasy worlds, but I'm also bi, and I'm not gonna.
You
It's
know.
one thing that's very different than C.S. Lewis.
Well,
Um.
we never know.
Oh.
Maybe that's why he was so
Uh.
religious.
Oh. Even that, I'm religious, and I don't share this kind of that kind of perspective on being queer. But there's the whole. What was the other thing? It was it's the you have such a different spin on it. Like I would have never written Susan off at the end of book 7. Did they just like? I'm still not over that. It's kind of he just
It's like
like kills off
100-year-old
Susan
book.
and I know, but like I, it's in the public domain in like 20 years. I can publish something about
You're
Susan.
gonna rewrite the. Oh no! Oh no! Just, you know what? I can picture it now.
Just
You're doing.
I've been listening to the audiobooks all summer, so that's why it's in my mind.
I'm just imagining it now that, you're doing quite well as an author, and then suddenly you publish the Chronicles of Narnia, the proper version. Everyone's like, why? And then the only difference is Anna survived.
Yeah.
The rest of the book is the
Oh,
same. But
it's like
yeah.
there you go.
So well, actually, you bring up a good point, because obviously religion plays a part in everyone's. Well, mm,
Hmm.
actually, I think it's a fair statement, don't you?
Yeah.
Religion plays a
Even just
part
like
in
the
everyone's life to a degree,
yeah.
because you're
Even just
either, yeah,
the lack of it.
the lack of it, yeah, especially. So I
Yeah.
know that growing up, I didn't have any religion, because my father was very cynical about whether or not anything existed, and my mother just didn't care. So I was never raised religious. I'm assuming you were raised
Yeah. Christian.
Christian. So,
Yeah. I was raised.
but when you discover these different things about yourself, because religion doesn't have to define everything about you, right? There are some people, like my grandmother is Samoan Catholic, so she's, Catholic, but she during the horrible time of the mosque shooting in New Zealand, she went to a mosque and prayed with them, because there are some things more important than what the priest says. So there's times when people who are religious can just go, well, I am, but I'm pretty sure God's going to forgive me for this.
Yeah. But even then, it's she's supporting the whole in like that situation. Like she's supporting the people who are mourning and their
Well, yeah,
weakest
it's
points.
it's also just the whole point of it, I think, was to show that
Mhm.
our country, was not going to divide. You know how
Yeah.
basically his idea, I think, because I've gone through his manifesto, I've seen stuff, and then so I've gone through all that, and essentially what he wanted was us to start persecuting Muslims and for them to start terrorist attacking us, and it just didn't work because we just turned around and said, no, you don't represent us. There's not going to be a holy war. There's not going to be anything like that. So when we all came together and just, sat around mosques and helped people, it just sent the message to him. And I think the ultimate punishment for him will be being in prison for the rest of his life, knowing he accomplished nothing but killing 51 innocent people.
Yeah.
So anyway, uh,
Mhm. I'm just, I'm so sorry. And I was just listening to that. I was like, there are shootings every day in the US.
oh
And it, and no, and I'm just like, and that, because there were so many, that kind of, each shooting doesn't make that kind of lasting impact. And I'm like, that's so sad.
it's well for countries like
Mm.
that don't have guns
It's
ingrained in
a
their
horrible thing.
culture. For us, it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, like
Like, that's how it should be.
the way. I mean, for example, another example, when a police officer shoots someone, even if the whole situation
Mhm.
is in the policeman's favor. So there was an example is there was a sniper some years ago that was picking people
Mhm.
off on a beach, and the police managed to corner him, and he started shooting back at them. So obviously they shot him. They aimed for somewhere else, but they hit him, and he died.
Mhm.
And so even though completely police officer was completely within the right, we still had the discussion.
Mhm.
We still had the law reviews and everything. And then when you're a
Oh,
foreigner
no.
looking at America, you're like, that's that's interesting. I remember because
It is.
Family Guy did a episode where they were in England, and they said a man with a pistol and two bullets is taking over the city of Manchester, and the joke being obviously that the UK police don't carry guns, and
Mhm.
it's quite interesting because when you tell Americans that not Americans, what do you call them?
Yeah.
When you tell more closed-minded people that, they go, well, how would you maintain law and order? It's like, well, we do.
Yeah. No, especially I spent my teenage years abroad, and so going back to America when I was 16, that was just an experience, like seeing it
So why were you living
all happen
abroad?
again.
Was your father a diplomat?
My dad was in the Navy for a while. Now
Uh,
he's retired.
oh yeah. So you
Yeah.
had quite a time being around the world with different cultures. So Canada, we're in the Middle East,
In Dubai.
Dubai. Oh, okay. So you were
So yeah,
there.
that was a time there.
That would have been interesting because they have like
What was?
the massive scary towers that if I was standing on, I would be looking down and going, "Oh God."
They
It's just
do. They're beautiful.
they're beautiful, but oh, oh God. So so do you think that's why you had a bit of an Arabic Asian inspiration for some of the that so that was drawn from that?
Oh yeah, of
So did you?
course.
Because I don't know much about Dubai's like
Mhm.
um. 'Cause I know in Morocco they still have parts of the medieval districts where where it was.
Mhm.
So do they still have that in Dubai, or have they bulldozed the whole thing and just started building these big beautiful cities?
They have a lot of stuff about culture there. Because part of it also is just because about 90% of the city they're foreigners. They're not from the UAE. And so they have a big part about, you're here now, so learn about our culture, learn all about this. They have an area of the city called Bur Dubai, and that's where they have some of the big museums, and they have like the old spice markets, and they're all still functional. They look just how they did 100 years ago when they were built, I think originally. But they or I don't know when they were originally built, but they look like they're not new. Um, the city really got built up in like the 80s, 70s, 80s. I think a lot of it there formed around the beginning of the 20th century. But then there's also other parts. They had the Bedouins that lived more out in the desert. Um, but all the history's still there. You have to take Arabic class, or at least sometimes, and so you have to take a certain amount, depending on the school you went to.
How much Arabic do you still
Yeah.
speak? Because I did German for 4 or 5 years, and then I'm dating a German. And I still can't remember anything. um,
Oh, my Arabic was very poor. I remember a lot of the food words. But I was that was the bad timing. I almost spit out your drink. No, I did online school for 1 semester because we moved in the middle of the school year. And then I went to like a proper like stone and brick high school, brick and mortar high school. And so the first semester there I did Arabic, but it was online. And I jumped into the second semester of Arabic, so that was just none of that was working. And then I had been doing French previously at my old school because I was in Canada. And so I went back to learning French. But now I'm like, I should have learned more Arabic when I was there. But you can't, there's not really many places for you to practice speaking Arabic because such a foreign city.
right, yeah, yeah. So like, yeah, yeah.
So that was part of it.
Hmm. So well, I don't know how we got into. just we just sort of went off on that. So we tend to bring up. I suppose what I should ask is, you said you're an astrophysics major. Well, you have a double major in English and
Yeah.
astrophysics. So, are you planning on doing a space themed book series? Because I think a lot of us remember people like Asimov, Heinlein, all these people who were actual scientists writing things that were actually
Mhm.
on the forefront of science. So I know that a lot of people would love to have like a astrophysicist giving proper strange ideas put out there. But are you planning on that, or is that something that wouldn't interest you?
Yeah, no, I'm totally planning on that. I've written a book about space in the past, but that was like, like practice writing stages
Right. Yeah.
back years ago. But I've been thinking about that for the last couple of weeks. I want to start. I read Dune last year.
Oh.
We've been talking about stuff that's inspiring, and
Yeah.
I want to finish reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I read the first book of that, and I want to keep continuing that. And I've to read all these books about sci-fi and all out there. Oh, when I read The Martian in high school, I loved that. And so I'm like, I want to do something that's like you were saying, like science at the forefront and talking about what's things to come.
Well, I suppose.
Um,
Well,
and so
let's explore that idea. So, if you were to
Mhm.
say, I don't know much about astrophysics because.
I'm ta-
Huh?
Oh, it's at the bachelor's level. It's the same thing basically as a physics degree. It's one course different in my
I
college.
don't know much about physics either, so, uh,
Oh yeah, I was saying that I'm taking my first astrophysics class in the fall. So
let,
that's also what I meant to
let me put
clarify.
it this way. I dropped science after year. Oh, what would that be in American? That'd be grade
I mean, I
10,
can translate.
year 10.
Great.
So I had
Your tint.
year
Yeah.
9. Year 9, I had an
Mhm.
amazing science teacher. I thought, oh my god, this is my calling. I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to go into physics. I'm going to work on the A bomb or whatever. And then I got this next year. I got the worst science teacher in the school, and it killed
Mhm.
everything. Any sort of
Yeah.
thing where I wanted to go into science was dead. I hated science. I hated biology. I used to love biology, physics, chemistry. I used to love all that. And then suddenly I was like, I see enough. I have to think about photosynthesis one more fucking time. I'm going to attack the nearest plant. And so that was me. That was the end of my science career. And I imagine you didn't have that. You probably had quite a no. What did you have science wise growing up?
Honestly, it was a mixture. It was a mixed bag. So math also that played a big like they go hand in hand together, math and physics all together. So I went by the time I entered my junior year of high school, that was my sixth school in 6 years. So I was transferring different schools a lot, like moving around, going through different systems, and it was affecting my science education, especially because like in Canada it's all like integrated, like the different sciences you learn a bit every year. But in the American school system, it's biology, and then it's chemistry, then it's physics, and then it's something else, whatever you do your senior year. Depends on your school.
Then Jesus
Um,
physics, yeah.
yeah, and so it's going all over. So my freshman year of high school, I was switching over from more Canadian system like IB. I was going back to an American school, and so I was able to take biology, which at the time was like my school in America put that at what would be our like grade 9. Then over there was like a grade 10 course that like half people did in grade 9, half people did in grade 10. It was a bit all over, depending on like moving. It was an international school, so a lot of kids moved all around. Um, and so they let me take that one, but they put me back in like beginner math I went on, and they were like, "Oh, are you sure you should even be in biology?" And I was just so I was like, "Oh, maybe I'm not good." And just with that year and with that teacher especially, because I I needed to learn some of the stuff in the class, but that was just I because I had been all over with like math and everything, but I was so bored in that class. I didn't pay attention. I still was at the top of the class. It was just a horrible class to be in. And the kids were like, "It's not even fair that you're here." And I'm like, "I know it's not. You guys didn't just homework and everything."
Do you know? Do
Just
you,
after that, I had that teacher for 2 years, and I was like, well, maybe just I got so kind of beat down by it. I had to work and take extra math classes the year after because you had to take 3 years of math to get into your physics by your junior year. So you have to fit 3 years of math before your junior year. And a lot of those kids would take it in eighth grade instead of you take math at international schools hold kids to like really high standards. So a lot of kids would take freshman math, like grade 9 math in like eighth grade. It was like half and half. So it's like having to catch up constantly. And then I got there and I switched schools and I was like, oh, this is something I still really enjoy. This is something I still like, and this is what I want to do.
and it's obviously great for the STEM statistics to have women going into the thing rather than well, there's that old joke, isn't there, about the oh well, it even applies to me because I'm Maori Samoan, so um if you know that like I'll be saying we need more Maori in STEM, and it's like, well, why don't you go into STEM? I'm like, well, let's not talk about that. so so how are
I've
you
heard
in
that before.
so how are you in English? Because a lot of this is something I haven't asked a lot of people,
Hmm.
but so for me in English, I sat there and ignored the teacher and just wrote what I thought was right and seemed to pass. Did you have a good English teacher? Did you have some bad English teachers? What was your deal with literature in general? Because obviously America, you guys have very different books that you have to read or something like that.
Yeah. It was a bit of back and forth. In middle school, I had some great English teachers. In high school, it was about half and half. I loved my 11th and 12th grade teachers. I loved them especially. Um, but one thing also was that made it difficult going in is I had some problems reading once I hit like middle school, and especially the beginning of high school. And it was taking me like the words felt like everything was moving. I never, there's a lot of complications there with getting diagnosed with anything once you're late teens. But I got some classes in the beginning of my junior year, and I was like, oh, I can read again. And I'm not like struggling and like having to highlight every other word and everything, or like not like, especially when you look up and down. That's what made everything difficult. Um, and so like taking notes and that kind of thing, it would take me a second to be able to actually focus and like read what was on my page again. and if I was like looking back and forth between the board. So that definitely impacted a lot of things my sophomore year, especially like math and science, even that, because it's going through its reading word problems, it's pulling numbers off the board. One time my junior year, I had my glasses, but I hadn't put on my glasses yet that day, or at least like that class. I pulled a bunch of numbers off the board for my lab partner, and then I put on my glasses. I was like, oh wait, sorry, we have to start over. I said all the wrong numbers. I thought I was reading them, but I read just completely different numbers.
Oh, that's certainly
And
a
so,
thing.
yeah.
Because I know that I don't know, because I've always been a bit thrifty with
Mhm.
trying to get money out of people. We'll talk about that afterwards, but no.
Like,
So so
this is a connection.
so I I sold creative writing stories to other students, and
Oh my God.
because they weren't published, obviously
Mhm.
they couldn't go, oh, someone else wrote this. Okay, who?
Yeah.
Well, it was Tremaine. How can you prove that? It's in his style. Oh, it's my style as well. No, what? And so
God.
I just had this thing where like I would ignore my maths, I would ignore whatever else I had to do, and I'd just write people's things, and then I'd sell them to them, and they'd go, "Yeah, thanks." And yeah, that's that's what I did. Because English, I don't know. There's some subjects that just come to you, right? There's just some
Yeah.
like history and English for me were the ones that just came to me. What were yours?
Mhm.
Was it
It was always math.
yeah?
Um,
You lucky mother.
I loved reading. I loved reading growing up, but it was back and forth. Depended on the school. I went to 7 different schools growing up, so that also made a big impact. And like different schools expected different things and wanted. Um, I remember when I moved to Canada, I was supposed to be there for all of secondary school. So I was supposed to be there for 6 years. And so my teachers were like, well, you're going to be here for a while. So you may as well learn British English and like switch over to all of that. I was like, okay. So I spent the whole year, I learned the different spelling, but I switched over.
You
And
started
then
using
the
you
first day of
more,
eighth,
yeah.
yeah. And the first day of 8th grade, my dad was like, it's okay. It's time to move. Well, it wasn't my dad. It was the whole, he got orders.
The Navy, yeah, the Navy were like,
But
we're gonna mess
yeah,
with Marie.
yeah. By that point, he worked in private enterprise for a couple of years. So by that point, it wasn't quite the Navy, because the Navy, I don't think, honestly, they wouldn't have done that, because it's a which is strange that him working in corporate in a corporation moved us way more than the Navy, because the Navy at least like could make a decision.
So you learnt British English. So you do you now
To
have a
the
conflict
spelling and
with
everything.
do you now have a conflict with your inner American English, just like constantly at odds with each other?
I do, because especially because 7th grade, that's when you start writing essays a lot. That's when I started fiction writing. Um, and so my voice, I find it's a good mix of the two. Um, and so then just like going back and forth. And then when I was in international schools, they were just like, yeah, whatever works. And then when I went back to America, they were like, you got to write in American. I'm like,
Speak American.
I haven't, I haven't for 4 years.
Well, so Jesus, I let that run. Um, so
Oh yeah.
let's do some closing thoughts. So give us an idea about actually, yeah, tell us when the book's planned to come out. Are you self-publishing or traditionally publishing?
I'm traditionally publishing. I guess like they were
Ooh.
technically like self-published for a bit, but yes, I'm in the process of trying to find an agent. Been curing. I had to take a break for 2 weeks because all my lab data got destroyed, and so I had a rush in the last 2 weeks of I was doing research this summer, and the in the beginning of the 8-week program, in the beginning of week 7, halfway through my day of tests, I got told, well, my last 2 weeks of research all was wrong because the light bulb was slowly dying in the machine. So just all of it scratched.
I love that. I love that. Sorry, you're gonna fail.
Oh,
Why? A light bulb was slowly dying in the machine.
yeah.
You can't see
That's what
Marie's face, but
happened.
she's looking very sad and very desperate. She was like, "Why? Why did that light bulb have to die?"
It was rough, especially because I already had I. It takes like 2 to 3 days to set up samples. I had less than 2 weeks left, and I had already both my samples were gone for the day because I didn't find out until halfway through
Oh
that
Jesus!
one day.
Oh
So
dear.
couldn't. So man, that happened.
Okay.
So everything got put on pause until I could finish my papers and do my research.
Right.
I'm in the process of curing agents. Um, I've been hunting down. It's a very specific niche. It's high fantasy and queer romance, and it's very otherworld. It's and then I also have to worry about like finding an agent that would want to like work with sci-fi in the future. So it's very niche
You've
stuff.
got your work cut out for you, and best of luck in
I do.
your journey. Hopefully,
Thank
we'll
you.
be able to see it being published at some point. So, yeah. So check out. Actually, yeah. Do you want to just give your
Yeah.
social media stuff and some stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'm easy. I'm on Twitter and TikTok mainly TikTok, and my handle is the same on both of those, and it's Sykes, and at the end there's 3 S's. So there's 3 M's in the front and 3 S's in the back.
MS.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and
So,
then
yeah.
that's mainly where I am. I'm on YouTube a little bit, but these days it's mainly just TikTok reposts.
Yeah, we're on YouTube now too, but uploading an hour long video is not bit of a
Uh-huh.
tax on my internet. So yeah, that's been fun.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so thank you all for listening, watching, either way. Remember to check out the podcast every Tuesday at 7 a.m. New Zealand time, and to check out our different social media. So we have on Instagram we have Tremaine Sci-Fi. On Facebook we have a Facebook page called Tremaine Sci-Fi. If you're not getting the theme here, you might need some help. On Twitter we're Tremaine Sci-Fi, and on YouTube with the Space Opera Conductor for some reason. So
Oh,
thank you all for listening. Marie, thank you so much for being with us, and
thanks for having me.
we'll see you all next time. Goodbye.